Hello, writers, and welcome to Writing for Screens. Today's live episode, Ask Me Almost Anything. What if I don't have a center? My name is Glenn Gers, and I am the Chief Operating Everything here at Writing for Screens, a channel that I built in order to take some of the skills and tools and lessons that I had to figure out for myself in a 25-year career writing for TV and movies, trying to pass those things on to you guys on my way out of the business. I have put my main thoughts into 50 lesson videos. Here's a screen grab of the main page of my channel, and if you look down towards the bottom, you will see some brightly colored thumbnails for the first 3 playlists. Take a look at those. They are Screenwriting Essentials, Screenwriting Tools, Skills, and Craft, and The Process, Being a Writer. These are together 50 10-minute videos. I call them lessons because each one is what I think is useful or interesting or something to try about a specific topic, genre, character, dialogue, flashbacks, whatever it is. I tried to build in a 10-minute lesson for you to think about, for you to try out for yourself, because there is no right answer. There is no right way. There is no rule or formula or system or one way to write. You need to figure out what works for you, because everyone is trying to do different things. Everyone is in a different life, a different world, a different set of skills. You've got to figure out what works for you, what's interesting to you, what's possible for you. And you've got to do that by taking a look at all the different stuff that's out there, taking what you like from it, getting rid of the rest, making it work for you. That's what I'm trying to help you with by offering you a bunch of stuff. Try it out, see if it works. If it doesn't, great. Don't do it. Now you know what doesn't work for you, and you can figure out who you are and what you need to do. That's the point. That's what we're doing here. So that's what my channel is based in. Then, having done those 50 lessons, I started to do live streams. Every Wednesday now at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time Zone, I come on live to talk about a different topic. Today's topic has to do with whether or not, what if you don't have a vision? What if you don't have one thing that's telling you what to do? And that's okay. I am also on Substack. Please join up. That's where I'm really living now. I'm going to start putting stuff on Substack that isn't even here. It's just little thoughts and essays, insights, sharing, all of that stuff. Substack, Writing for Screens. Very easy to find. Can't wait to see you there. Also, if you happen to like these lessons but want them in a book form, it exists. The information about that is in the description. I did a book. Okay, let me do some quick hellos and then we'll get into the topic. Hi, Nishaj. Happy holidays. Yes, it's Thanksgiving week here in the United States of America, which is where I live, and that's what's going on. For those of you who are in America, happy Thanksgiving. Hello, YX11. Lulu Wolf. Oh, great. I am so glad. That is great. Lulu Wolf, not Lulu Wolf. Lulu Wolf. Hi, Lulu Wolf. Very nice to see you. I'm very glad you're here. I've seen your comments before. I appreciate them. Hi, Michael. Yes, thank you. Okay, let's get right to it because I got a question. Got an email with a question. It's a pretty complicated question, so I'm going to talk about it. It's from Benjamin. Benjamin, shout out to you. Thank you for this question. It was an excellent one. It was thought-provoking. I want to talk about it. The basic question is, here's the deal. He said he's watched a lot of the videos. He's got this idea. He wrote an outline. And then he said, I have realized my outline isn't the story I want to write. Whoops. Isn't the story I want to write. I've written a detailed outline of what happens before where I want to start to justify where I'm starting. So basically, in building up this story, he said, well, I need to explain why. I need to explain how, and wrote an outline for a whole story to get to the beginning of the world he wants to write about. Said, maybe I misunderstood the assignment. Either way, I've enjoyed the process. Said, so now that I have exhausted myself with world building, how do I find what I want to write? I have this large collection of ideas, but I can't seem to find the plot that will share this universe. I want to share this world I've created, but nothing is screaming, "This is the way." I'm unsure in all options what the point is because I just want to share the world. The characters or storylines seem like an afterthought. That doesn't sound like good storytelling. Do I take what I have and turn it into a screenplay, even though it's not what I want to write, or keep brainstorming until I find the idea that I love? This is a very good, complex question with a lot of layers to it. I am very happy to talk about it. So let's get into this with the first part about it is, first of all, this happens. It is not the end of the world. You've built this world. You did this world building that you like. You like the world you built. Convention says the next step is invent a story about a character or a set of characters set in this world. And that's where you're having trouble. But it sounds like you think of a lot of stuff. You're not stuck because it's not good enough. I can't find the right thing. It's not good enough. It's that I can't feel one thing. There's like, I have this story and I have this story and I've got a lot of stories and none of them is saying, this is it. This is the center. And that's the point about this is, and I've often talked about this, finding the central story, choosing it based on what you feel, what you want. What if you don't feel it? What if you don't have one story that's working? You liked world building and you got a lot of stories. This is key. The answer is in the question. Almost always, when you're stuck on something, if I'm not around to tell you this, I'm telling you right now, probably the answer to your question is in the question. Because what the question is saying is, I don't feel like I have one answer, but I'm supposed to have one answer. Stories are supposed to work this way. Maybe not. Your answer is, I don't feel that. I'm not seeing that. I would be forcing myself to fit into a formula that I don't actually like or believe in. That's not what's driving me. What's driving me is a world full of different stories. That's okay. Maybe you don't have one story. Maybe you don't have one answer. You have to write your way. Now, let's talk about this because this is one of those things. There is a reason, like within the business, you're going to find that people are saying, you have to choose a story. There's too many stories. There's too much going on. Da, 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 da. That's how they talk in the business, by the way. That's no. Here's the thing. Not everybody has one thing, one central thing that they know for sure is what is they're about. You don't have to have that. It's like this thing very often now in the upscale world of Los Angeles and other upscale parts of America, certainly. There's this belief that all young people have to find their passion and build their career off of what they love most. First of all, you may not know what you love most when you're 15 or when you're 40. And second of all, maybe you don't just have one. I'm going to tell you a little personal story about my mother. My mother, in the 1950s, left Richmond, Virginia. She was a very talented artist, and she wanted to be an artist. And so she went to New York City, which in the 1950s was the place to go to be an artist. And she got work as a fashion illustrator. She worked for catalogs and local newspapers doing advertising drawings. They're quite beautiful, actually, of clothing and stuff for ads, because they didn't always take photographs for ads. Sometimes they did art. So she was an illustrator. Then she and my dad met. They got married. She stopped being an illustrator and started being a wife and mom. So that's phase 1 and phase 2. However, once the wife and mom thing was going along, once my sister and I were off at school all day and within reason things were running well, she still loved art, and she wanted to be a painter, among other things. So she went to the Art Students League in New York City, which is one of the best art schools, and it's very creative, it's very flexible. It's not like you have to follow this formula. It's a place where different people work in different ways. She went in, she liked classical painting. She worked on classical painting for a few years. Then she felt like she needed to make some more money, so she stopped going to the Art Students League and started working in a clothing store, where she soon became the manager of the clothing store. And for many years, for about 5 to 10 years, she worked that way. Now and then also going to the Art Students League, busy, complicated life, being a wife and mom and all that. She also then she stopped working at the clothing store to focus on her art, worked on painting, moved to sculpture, was very good at painting but didn't quite feel right. She moved to sculpture, which she was very good at, but also didn't feel quite right, moved on to printmaking. Then she ended up working in a bookstore, loved working in a bookstore, and ended up owning an art bookstore because that was the type of books that she liked most. So after she had retired, she's elderly now, and she said, I failed. I never got anything right. I never did one thing. And what I thought, and what everyone else in the world thought, was, no, you succeeded at a series of things. You were a paid illustrator. You were a wife and mom, and your kids survived. You did paintings. Then you did sculpture, and you did good work in each of those. Then you ended up moving for financial reasons into the book world, and you ended up owning a bookstore. That's success after success. The fact that you stopped and moved on to another thing is not failure. It is life. That's what happens. Lots of people do lots of things. You don't have, there's this weird mythology that you are driven by a single thing and that is the center of your life and you know what it is, and that's crazy talk. That is the weird mythology of a certain type of vision of careers and success. It may not be how life is. The truth is, Benjamin, maybe you're just not interested in telling stories the way that Hollywood is currently telling them, with one central story. And that's how you feel, and that's what you should do. Maybe your world doesn't have a story. Maybe you're going to write I said to Benjamin, maybe just write a history or guidebook to an imaginary world, or a series of stories with different characters who live in the world. Maybe they're connected, maybe they're not. Maybe you just create this world. That's cool. That's all right. You have to write your way. Now, will that be harder to sell? Could be. Certainly in terms of movies, it would be harder to sell. Very competitive industry, very narrow-minded, frightened, formulaic industry. And the work is very expensive. Like if you want to make a movie, it costs tens of millions of dollars. That becomes hard to justify doing something experimental. But if you work in another art form, you can do whatever you want. You want to write stories and make them collected into a book or a video game or whatever it is, you can do that. The point is you need to recognize that this is a choice. There is not the best way, the right way, and you have to do that. It's the best way to fit into the business, but it's not the best way to be an artist. You have to decide what you want to do. Everything is a choice, and every choice has a price. If you decide, I want to be in the business, you may have to choose one story and have it be central, because that's how the business is looking at things right now. That's a choice. You'll be sacrificing your art for the business. Or you can say, I'm going to do this art the way I want to do it. I'm going to do it either as a screenplay or as a novel or as whatever, a bunch of stories. I'm going to put them out on my own website. I'm going to create a world. I'm going to make a Substack, whatever it is. You can do that. You aren't likely to get paid what union screenwriters get paid to do what the business wants. But that's okay. That is the choice. You are following your art, and you never know. When you follow your art, it is entirely possible that if you commit to it and if you do a good job of it, and if it happens to click with somebody in power, maybe they'll say, hey, let's make this into a TV series. But you won't know unless you actually create it, unless you dive into your choice and say, I am going to do this within my means, within what I can control and what I can do, so that I can follow my choices. Now, you're going to say, well, wait a second. What do you mean everything is a choice? You're saying this person has a strong artistic feeling that they don't want to tell a conventional story, and they should not fight that. So they should go, that's not a choice. In other words, they have no choice to say, oh, I I can write this way or that way. This person is feeling, I really can't write it in the conventional way. I can't do that. So why do you say that's a choice? Sometimes the choice is, do you choose to accept who you are? In other words, if you really can't write a certain way and the business says write a certain way, you can either choose, I'm going to fight my own instincts. I'm going to work according to rules that I don't believe in. I'm going to learn how to do that and practice it and do it, and I'm going to make that choice. Or you can choose to say, I'm going to choose to do what feels right to me, following my instincts, and the price of that may be that the business doesn't love me. That's an okay choice to make. The point is you have to decide, when you look at yourself and find that answer, which is already there, it was in the question, will you choose to accept who you are? Because here's the deal. You are not required to do or be just one thing. The only thing you can be sure will happen is change. Okay, yes, you may have a certain style. Like, I thought I was a certain kind of writer when I started writing screenplays. As I worked on them, after 10 or so screenplays, I began to change my style, my way of writing, because it was a part of a natural development as I learned and grew and steered towards things that now were interesting while other things were interesting. That is natural. That is part of life. We all grow and change. It is insane to believe that you will have one thing that you decide when you are young and then you're going to stick with it and be that at the end. That just doesn't happen. You know, sometimes it does. I mean, like, I always wanted to be a writer, but I'm a different kind of writer than I thought I would be. And I've learned and grown and changed and tried different things all along the way. Don't try to force yourself to be stuck being one thing. We change. Who said you have to decide that your whole life and your identity are now and forever? You don't have to say, okay, now I'm doing this, and having done it, that's who I am forever. Like, yes, Stephen King mostly likes to do horror. He actually does a bunch of other things, and he often does them under other names because people are branding. But the truth is, many people, they try different things. You know, it's actually, you know, you get somebody like David Bowie, who tries different musical styles as they go on. Bob Dylan, Bruce Springsteen, people who have very, very identifiable styles when they hit big. But the truth is, they change as they go along. We all change. It is part of life. So here's the thing. Here's what I suggest. Make your choice for now. It's just for now. It's just what you're doing now because it's what feels right now. The world changes. We change. Everything changes. It's okay. Just do what you do right now and don't worry about the grander meaning. And if that choice is something that is not going to be what the world is, the business is telling you is acceptable, make that choice. It's all right. You can either choose, I'm going to subsume my soul to the business in order to try and make money. Remember, that's not guaranteed. Or you can say, you know what, I'm going to not worry about the money. I'm going to do the art as best I can. Who knows, maybe someone will like it and it will click. You can't tell. None of these things are guaranteed. No sure things in art. It is not like if you follow, if you do X, Y, and Z, you are guaranteed a reward as an artist. Doesn't work that way. Has nothing to do with whether you're good or bad. It has to do with a whole slew of different things which are constantly changing. So that's my thought on this. I'm going to move on and get some questions and talk about stuff with you guys. So let's see what's happening. Okay. Thank you for listening to me rant. That was my rant. Okay. Hi, Adam Lum. How you doing? Good to see you. Leah. Hello, everyone from Transylvania. Oh, my book arrived. That's so cool. Now, are you seriously in Transylvania? If so, so cool. And so cool that my book would arrive there. That's really great. Hi. Adam's Movie. How are ya? And Lake Filter, hello, and Michael. Write the prequel. Eventually a story falls into place. Yeah, if you, but here's the thing. Benjamin said, didn't really like the prequel. Didn't feel like it was worth writing the whole thing. It was just something that he instinctively felt he was supposed to do. But the truth is, he doesn't like it that much. And if you don't like it that much, and there's no guarantee, like when you're in the business, and somebody says, okay, we will hire you to do this thing, and you don't like it so much, you say, I'm going to trade off the money because it is guaranteed. They are hiring you. They're giving you a contract to do drafts of this thing that you may not like that much, but you know you can do it. So you say, okay, I'm going to trade money for work. But if no one's offering you the money up front, you might as well do the thing you think is good. So, I got Llewellyn's name off, and I was calling them Luluwolf, which is interesting. Okay. Ghost Productions. I just finished a second draft of a feature I've been working on for a while. I have mixed opinions on it, but it was a good learning experience. That is excellent. Ghost Productions, that is all you can ask. Everything we do, we will have mixed opinions on. That's what, I mean, honestly, by the time I get to the end of a project, I'm tired of it. And even if I think it's good, I'm bored of it. I don't think it's that good. That happens. It's all right. As long as it was a good learning experience and you have things you want to do next and you have things about it that you thought were good, excellent. Well done. Hi, Next Institute. Good morning. Hasko, not the pirate. The world outside is colder than my fridge. That is what happens in November and December. I am sorry. Stay inside, Hasko. Okay, Lake Filter says, interesting topic. I don't see it as a problem, though. That's pretty much the outline for my next novel if I were able to write it. You mean the idea of a scattered bunch of stories? Cool. The problem, I believe, Lake Filter, was that Benjamin felt like there was a set of conventions or rules that they were supposed to follow, and their artistic instincts were going against that. So the question that Benjamin was, should I keep looking for this type of story that I don't feel and try to find one that I love, or should I just do what I love? And I'm just advising, unless you have a very strong reason to give up what you love, do what you love. That's my personal opinion, because you're gambling either way. Okay. Next Institute says, it seems that the timing may not be right. What's the zeitgeist in terms of topics? I'm not sure what that means. What were we referring to there, Next Institute? Let me know. Got time. Hello, Thomas Lewis. We're fans of Glenn. Okay, now I'm blushing. Okay, Ghost Production says, true, I enjoy every medium of art, comic, manga, novels, anime, and realistic live-action dramas, which is why I want to try and experiment in every form. Ghost Productions, I am with you. You have to decide. What I found is I want to do more than I practically can. In other words, I have all these ideas, all these possible paths, and the truth is each one of them to get good enough to be competent at would take too long to do if I'm doing all of them. And if you do all of them at once, you tend not to get anything done. So for me, I have found that what I have found works best is to say, I'm going to do this one now. I don't know if I'll get to do the other ones. I hope to. But for the moment, I'm choosing this one as my primary thing. I'm going to make my choices in this. And then you do that for a while. And then if you want to switch, cool. I don't personally find I can do everything at once. Hasko says, sci-fi is often blamed to have single-purpose planets, the ice world, the desert world, the capital world. And that's a whole planet. How can a mere individual be more than one thing? Every mere individual is more than one thing. We are all more than one thing. I am a father. I am a student. I am a son. I am a writer. I am a citizen. I am a lazy slob. I am so many things. That is just what happens. We are all, I contain multitudes, to quote Walt Whitman, who was recently, that I contain multitudes was recent. I just saw the movie Life of Chuck, which has so much in it that's really beautiful and well done. I feel like there's some flaws in the last part, but it's good. Life of Chuck, Mike Flanagan adapting a Stephen King short story, Life of Chuck, starring Tom Hiddleston. I recommend it, actually. But the key is there's a lot in it about this Walt Whitman quote, I contain multitudes. Do I contradict myself? Very well, then, I contradict myself. Michael says, I thought I finished my screenplay. I woke up at 5 and added new scenes. It's taking me a year to reconnect the dots. Welcome to the world. This is the world of being a writer. You think you get it, and then you discover, oh, wait, that's that's not quite done. I have a new thought. I have a new way. That's cool. That's all right. If you find yourself eventually like undoing your work, if you find yourself like you're writing and writing and writing, and pretty soon you're just writing a whole new thing, and everything that you wrote originally is gone, that's a time to say stop, move on to the next thing. But sometimes it takes a while. I work on things for years and years. Living bread from heaven. Hello, greetings. Business-related question. $5 is too expensive for a novel in my country. Should I put an extra effort to make them available on the local bookstore or just stick it to the international market? Okay, wow, that is a business question. There is obviously not a right answer. The question really is it possible to create an inexpensive novel that can be released in your country for the price that people can pay? Is there a way to reduce the production costs? This is an issue because sometimes you're dealing with international companies like Amazon, and their pricing is based in the wealthier world in which $5 is too cheap for a book because of production costs. So the question is there a local company or some way that you can reduce your costs? Because my feeling is basically the goal is not to make a lot of money. I mean, that's a lovely goal, but if you have to choose, you would rather have a lot of people buy your book. And if it's at a reasonable price for the country that you're in, then try to get to that reasonable price if you can afford it, if you can find a way to practically do it. That's my take. My take is I had to price my book at a certain price because at a certain point it cost more to print than the price would cover. And so therefore they actually won't let you do that. You can't lose. You're not allowed to lose money in the system. You're not allowed to price something at lower than its cost because eventually you'll end up in debt to the publisher, the printer. But other than that, I would say adjust your price, adjust your production, adjust your price, see what you can do. I personally would try to price it so that more people can buy it. I would rather sell 1,000 $5 books than one $5,000 book. That's me. Okay. Ghost Production says, yeah, I'm going to work on short stories in prose form and short screenplays. Less long projects so I don't burn myself out. Wise. If possible, I tend not to think in terms of shorts. I tend to think not in short stories. But you will learn more and faster, and you will have less of the crises I have where I work on something for 5 years because they're big. And so, yes, work on shorts if you can, Ghost Productions. I think that's great. I am excited for you. Adam's Movie. What are your thoughts on writing controversial stories, like stories involving race? I've seen writers go absurdly comedic route as a way to ease the tension. What are your thoughts on that? Well, there's a bunch of different thoughts. One of them is the thoughts of what am I getting myself into by writing something that is going to be on a controversial topic or taking a controversial stance? The downside is you can get a lot of hate. If you are successful, the hate gets big. It's sort of the tricky part about success. If you are, some person who only, 5 people see your work and you've written something really controversial, it's not really going to be a problem because most people are going to be like, yeah, whatever. So the first question is, are you willing to take on the controversy that will come from writing controversial stories? That's a choice you have to make. Everything is a choice, and every choice has a price. The price of writing something controversial is A, Some people may be so mad at your stand on it or the fact that you went there at all that they simply exclude you, that you get forbidden to be published or forbidden to be read or whatever it is. That is a possibility when you take a controversial stand. So you have to think, is this worth it to me? Is that the hill I die on, as they say? But on the other hand, controversy can sometimes stir up a big response. And therefore, some people seek it out. They're like, hey, let me push some buttons and see if I can get some response. That's a choice to make. Just recognize that it is a choice you are making, and there are consequences to making the different parts of the choice. I personally would say, in general, but especially when it comes to controversial topics, believe what you're saying. If you're going to say something, don't do it just because it's shocking. Try to believe. Try to say something that you feel like, I am comfortable putting this in the world, even though some people won't like it. I believe in it. I believe people should hear it. I'm willing to face people who are going to believe differently and stand by my beliefs. That's what I think you should do for that topic. But some people are just like, hey, what the hell? I'll just, I'll push some buttons and see what bells I can get ringing. So that's my take. As far as being comic, I no longer feel that people are safe because it's funny. There was a long time when, starting back with Dr. Strangelove and that era, where people were doing absurd, controversial comedies to take on topics that were uncomfortable. And that was cool. Now, people seem to have less of a sense of humor, honestly. And so therefore, comedy does not diffuse controversy. Comedy is just likely to be misunderstood as bad statements for bad reasons. So I wouldn't look on comedy as the way to make it safe. If you're going to be controversial, you're not going to be safe. That's the whole point of controversial. And therefore, I would say, just know you're going to do it. Don't pretend that it's not happening. You are making a choice. You should. You should make that choice, I mean. Living bread from heaven. Question. I have a film degree and I'm looking now to start work. I love writing, but I know it may not provide a stable income. Definitely will not provide a stable income, even if you do well. What practical type of job should I pursue alongside my writing? Living bread from heaven. I love this question. This is a good one. Okay, let's talk. First of all, in the arts, even when I was a union writer with a good agent and a manager and a good reputation and I was getting work all the time, I never, ever felt stable. I never felt and honestly, I've almost never heard of, until you get into like the weird stratosphere of people who have made so much it doesn't matter. Even the working professionals do not feel stable. They do not feel safe. You do not know if you're going to get the next job. And like I said, I remember watching Robert Benton, the writer of Bonnie and Clyde, a legendary writer-director, Kramer versus Kramer, multiple Academy Awards. Some of the, if you've never seen his Bad Company with Jeff Bridges, it's amazing. The legendary filmmaker, he still was having trouble getting work. There were times when he would try and do a project and it would fall apart. No one is safe. No one is safe in the arts. So therefore, that's the first thing. Don't believe that will ever. You may get in there and you may get lucky and get some money, but you still won't feel safe. You still won't feel stable. So that's just a distant question. Right now, what type of practical job should I pursue alongside my writing? Depends on you. For instance, when I got out of college, I thought, I'll go into publishing because I like writing and publishing is to do with writing. And I lived in New York City, and at the time that was the center of the publishing world. And that was, so I got a job in publishing, but it was in the marketing department, the publicity department of the paperbacks division of Simon & Schuster. So therefore, I was working for a big publisher. It's a corporate job. I was fresh out of college, and I had an English degree, and I wanted to be a writer, and I lasted 6 months. Because here's the thing. If you work at a job like in publishing or some arts-related job, they want you to be all in on that job. They don't want that to be your day job that you don't really care about. So they actually, at the 6-month review of my publishing job, Carla, my boss, said, "You're really good. We like you. You are not trying very hard. You clearly don't care. We need you to either care or leave." And I left, and I became a receptionist, because I had noticed in offices that the receptionist, which is a job that almost doesn't exist anymore, but at the time, the receptionist could read a book, could sit at the desk, and if the phone wasn't ringing and no one was coming to the desk, they could do what they wanted. That was my dream job. And I got it, and I worked for a year as a receptionist, and then I started being an office temp, and I was an office temp for another 10 years. Office temping for a while, and then I took a full-time, what was it then called, assistant job, a secretarial job. It was a job typing someone's stuff and doing someone's Xeroxing. For me, I wanted a job that didn't demand much, didn't pay much, but it didn't demand much, so that I could still be full-time writing in my mind and sneaking bits of writing at my desk. That was what worked for me. I know other people, there's like, I'm going to be a night watchman because I can write. There are some people who say, I'm going to work in film production, which is very hard to get right now, especially in the United States. But they are like, I'm going to work really hard. When you're working in film production, you are working 24 hours a day. You work, then you fall asleep for a few hours, and then you go back to work. Film production is very demanding. But these people would say, I'm going to work a job. It's going to last 3 or 4 months. I'll work a couple of those jobs, and then I will take time off and do nothing but write. That's another way to look at it. Some people, they teach. They say, I'm going to be a high school teacher or something because that way I get my summers off. I don't know. It depends on how it works for you, what your particular skill set is, what your particular tolerance is. Can you handle being in an office and doing grunt work, which doesn't require your soul, but it can be annoying and demeaning and demanding? I don't know. I really don't. There isn't a right answer. The answer is, first of all, try different things if you can. Second of all, what are the demands on your income? In other words, if you could, be a babysitter or a dog sitter or a gig worker driving Uber, and you can pay your bills, maybe you do that. But if you're living in a city like Los Angeles or New York, Chicago, you probably can't pay your rent that way. So then the question is, can you live with your parents? Can you have a roommate? It's an incredible juggling act to figure out how to be an artist when you are also having to be a citizen of the world. That is an ongoing problem. There's different varieties of it. Everyone has their own version. The main thing is to not believe that there is a way out of it. Like when I became, after all those years, 12 years of office temping and Xeroxing stuff and working what was the equivalent of gig working at the time. Sometimes I would just temp for one day, sometimes a week at a time. 12 years of that, then I finally started to make money as a writer because Hollywood was paying, and I got lucky and I got in. Hard work led to luck. But the thing is, I never then felt, I'm safe. I always felt like, well, this job is great, but it only pays me to get through half of this year. So I need to find another job. While I'm writing this one, I'm trying to hustle up my next job. That is a continual thing for any working professional writer. You're constantly looking for the next job. There's no such thing as job security. So you've got to figure out what works for you. Maybe marry a rich person and have them support you. Everybody, there's different ways to approach this. Or you could say, I'm going to move to a part of the world where my expenses will be really low. I can rent a place for much less money, and I can survive on, doing eBay or Etsy or something. Everybody's got to figure out their own way. And the main thing is, don't think you have to set it up for life. Just do what works now. The difference is, you are not going to be trying, probably not going to be trying to establish a career and build that second career. Like, you're not going to be saying, okay, I'm going to be a lawyer and also a writer. There are people who do that, but they probably were on the lawyer track. You don't do lawyer as a day job. You do lawyer because you like lawyering, and you do writing because you like writing, and you balance them. But you do recognize that by choosing to be an artist, you are probably choosing to do some form of work that's going to be somewhat unstable. Life is very unstable right now. You have to figure out your tolerance for that. The other thing is, you can try and build something like, what if you had like a coffee shop, and you worked in coffee shops for a while, and then eventually you found a way to make a coffee shop because you liked running a coffee shop, and in your off hours you could write. Maybe that's the way to do it. Everybody's got their own thing that feels workable to you. There is not a right or wrong way to do this, and prepare for things to change. For instance, when I was a professional writer, after 12 years of office temping, and I get into the business, and I'm doing well for about 10 years in the business, then the business changed. The type of writing I did, which was features, became less important, and television came up, and I was not experienced or connected in television. You just never know. Okay. Next Institute said, you said you need to do what you want and like, even if it's not right at the moment for that novel or film. Was wondering what, according to you, is the zeitgeist now beyond vampires? What is the zeitgeist now? That is a great question, because nobody knows. I don't think vampires are hot right now. Zombies were hot for a while. Vampires and zombies sort of like traded places on and off for a while. Horror still does seem to have its own vibe, but right now horror is actually mostly, there's like classic horror, there's like Conjuring, industrial horror, studio horror. Then there's offbeat horror, like Together, the Alison Brie, Dave Franco movie. And they didn't write it or direct it. Actually, they may have been on the writing. But the point is, that's a body horror thing. What's going? I honestly don't know. It's gotten very complicated, because it used to be that the studios and the networks operated on years-long scale. In other words, they would put in a development state. It would take about a year to make a movie. So you knew roughly where they were going for that year. Now, everything is just shifting every 5 minutes, because tech has changed the pace of things. And they're saying, oh, wait, the algorithm is saying we should go towards Nazi love stories, bear documentaries, whatever it is. They're just veering one way or the other, literally weeks at a time. So like all of a sudden Squid Game was the thing, and dystopian game shows were the thing, and then they fell off. You don't know. So my personal sense is, the other thing is, we're all living in different zeitgeists. Like the zeitgeist of people who are really into, anime is going to be entirely different from the rom-com zeitgeist. And they're both living at the same time. It used to be that studios would go, okay, we'll do a little of this, we'll do a little of that. We have a slate. We spread it out amongst the genres. That is no longer the case. So the answer is, I honestly am not sure there is a zeitgeist right now. The zeitgeist may have broken, and it is entirely possible that we have to choose the zeitgeist we want to be in, choose the zeitgeist we're going to bet on. See if there is any business in that, but also remember, it can come and go. I am personally voting to not try and ride the zeitgeist, because it's no longer rideable. Living Bread from Heaven, my book has been revolutionary. Thank you so much. I am so glad to hear that. Thank you. Burgundy, Lake Filter, did you write it in English? Maybe you can make an excerpt for free and find a reasonable price for the full version. Burgundy is talking about Lake Filter's issue. Is in a country where the price of books needs to be very low, but the production cost of books is very high. So the question is it in the language of that country, or is it in English? Because English probably can be sold in the pricier markets of America and English-speaking countries. Good point, Burgundy. Ghost Production says, race is a very difficult topic, but it doesn't mean it can't be done well. Black Klansman and American fiction do it really well. Absolutely true. This is true. Now, the thing about race as a topic is that right now it is a very delicate topic. There are some people who are simply so sensitive on the subject or so determined to steer the conversation on that subject, which I am not saying is right or wrong. I'm just saying that is a situation that is currently heightened right now, so that no matter what you do on a certain topic, immigration, religion, there's certain things that are just very, very controversial. And the thing you have to recognize is that if you are going to take on those topics, like I said, you need to believe what you do, and you have to recognize that there are going to be many people who don't read your work for what it says. They simply use it as a pawn in a larger game. However, I got to say, absolutely, Black Klansman is terrific. American fiction is amazing. American fiction is a truly amazing film. Love it to death. Okay. Michael says, some people look at a painting multiple times searching for something. I feel the same about some movies. Yes, I feel the same about many different types of art. Books, plays, movies, records. Sometimes you just get something. Sometimes something is easier to get than others. And others also, sometimes there's just a match between you and a piece of work, and it just speaks the language that you can hear at that moment. And then later, either it no longer speaks to you or you grow into it. And I don't mean grow into it like that's better. I mean, you change and you are more accepting of it or interested in it. Next Institute says, Glenn, you really have to explain how you can react so fast and have images ready on topic. I'm trying to figure out, most of my images are prepped for the topic that I'm bringing in. Like I don't have a meme store space that I pull from to answer questions. I don't know that I have images ready for you guys. I have images ready for me because I spent the morning preparing. I said, oh, let me make a series of notes here. Let me show you. Okay, do I have this? Yeah. Okay. I'm going to pull aside the curtain. So here is my notes for this episode. And as I was talking, I was reading these. That was all the original stuff. But then, see this stuff? This is my graphics. I put my graphics in blue so I know, oh, there's a graphic. Do that. There's a thing about my mom. So I had this scripted. And that's how I did that. The answer is I prepared. As for how do I handle what's coming at me, I don't know. Partly because I'm old and I've been thinking about this stuff for a long time, and because I had to codify it into these lessons in the book, I now feel like I've got a sense of what I think about things. But images, no. Living Bread from Heaven says, I love that film. I think Jordan Peele could definitely make more controversial films that toes the line into comedy. Absolutely. Jordan Peele. Nope I like Get Out, but I actually think the work Us is amazing. Nope is phenomenal. I think Get Out was a little easy compared to these others. Nope and Us are fabulous. Okay. Oh, the Wolf. I have to dash. Yes. Okay. See you later. If you're already gone, I hope now during the rewatch, it was great to see you. Thank you for being here. Okay. They have like 10-hour days. It's crazy. 10. You mean like production? No, production. 10 is a great day. If you've got a 10-hour day in film production, you are lucky. they can go up to 15 or 18. It is not healthy film production. Okay. Lake Filter says, Burgundy, it is written in English. That's an interesting idea. The problem I have with local audience is rampant piracy and declining literacy, which tears my soul apart. That's painful. I would say rampant piracy. We're in a weird world. We're in a world where, yes, you can distribute things yourself. You can publish a book and get it out there yourself. You can even do it without going through Amazon if you want to do the work of it. The problem is, yes, piracy happens. Piracy is going to happen. And declining literacy also, honestly, literacy is declining all across the board. One of the main things you have to say, like, I'm choosing an art form because I like that art form. There is not a great big art, opera or painting art audience right now. And certainly there's like an elite one. But the truth is the vast majority of people don't care about a vast majority of art forms. And what you just got to do is say, can I work in my niche, even though, and here's the thing, it probably won't pay. It always probably won't pay. Even working in Hollywood probably won't pay. That's why I really urge people to think in terms of how can I balance paying the bills and doing the art, not believing that they're one thing. Sometimes they overlap. Sometimes there's a little Venn diagram that gets going, but a lot of times they are separate, and you've got to live a life that balances them. Hi, Arrow Flight. Glad to see you too. Okay, Burgundy comes back to Glenn's topic. Will you adapt to your local readership's habits or expectations, or will you choose to find your readership somewhere else? Choice is yours. Thank you, Burgundy. Right on. Okay, we're gonna slow down on the questions and comments because the hour is ending. However, LZ Skydog says, as a screenwriter, I want to focus on every detail, from the costumes and sets to the performance, emotion, and music. I believe it's the only way I can truly convey the meaning of my story. What is your perspective on this? LZ Skydog, my perspective is not going to work. My perspective is, and I have to tell you, I was a screenwriter like that for a long time, including when I was in the profession, and it made things difficult because a screenwriter does not have control over those things. So if you focus on every detail, first of all, the odds are you will be writing a script that is difficult for people to read. And second of all, you are trying to you are stepping into someone else's job. And you are saying, I am going to tell you to do the job the way I want. In other words, costume design and set design are full artistic pursuits in the process of creating a film production. And the screenwriter has no more business coming to the costume and saying, have bigger shoulder pads than the costume designer comes in and says, oh, could you make that character a foot shorter? Because it would be really cool to have the colors be this way. Or so, it's just, you're get out of each other's way. The truth is, if you want to be a screenwriter who controls every detail, you'll have to be the filmmaker as well. And please believe me, as someone who spent 50 years trying to do that, they're not going to like it. They're not going to let you. Running a film production, directing, producing, those are full-time, complex careers. It's not like you can be a screenwriter and say, oh, yeah, I'm going to step into the director's chair and you know how to do it. You don't. You may be talented at both. I'm talented at both, but it took me a long time to learn how to do each, and to learn that nobody wanted me to do each. They want the screenwriter to do his job and the director to do his job, and they don't usually want somebody to do both. The only way that people get to do both is by doing it and proving that they can. So therefore, if you want to be a screenwriter who's going to be a director, then you're probably going to have to start directing as well. Make little indie films, whatever it is, but you can't just say, I will be able to do that. You're going to have to show them that you can. But as far as is a screenwriter allowed or able to put in every detail, focus on the only way to truly convey the meaning of the story, I have to push back on this. I have to say the meaning of your story may be further expressed by the performance, by the costumes. However, the meaning should reside in the story. The things that a screenwriter writes are the story, the characters, the action, and the dialogue. In other words, the stuff that's in the screenwriting format. If it is incredibly important that somebody cries, let me alert you, because I did this as a screenwriter-director in a film that I did where I was directing, producing, paying for my own film so that I could do it exactly the way I wanted. And I had this imagined scene of this character breaking down. And I described it. And I gave it to the actor. And the actor couldn't do it that way. They just couldn't. It was an incredibly painful and important learning experience for me to learn you cannot control other people's emotions. You can try to provoke them, but when that doesn't work, as a director, your job is to say, what other way can we do this emotion? And there are many. What if you believed that somebody bursting into tears is the way to do that, but the actor just doesn't do it? They can't, it doesn't work. Now, you can either just berate them until they cry, or more likely you can say, well, what if the way that they express this emotion is by not crying, by holding it in? That's actually going to work too. But if you're so fixed on this imaginary thing, you are not screenwriting. The fact is, even the greatest writer-directors find that they cannot control all of those details. The real art of screenwriting and directing is recognizing that there is this complex balance, this complex dance of all these collaborators. That is what filmmaking is. It's true if you're a director, it's true if you're a screenwriter. Your job is to do your part. Screenwriter's part is to figure out who these people are, what this story is, how do they say it, what actions, dramatic actions do they take? And then you can suggest a costume design, you can suggest an emotion and a performance, but recognize that if you overdo that, you're going to bog down the read, because these other people are reading to do their jobs from the emotions, the characters, the dialogue, and the action. That is where they are getting their inspiration. That is your job to provide that, and then they find their creative expression of that. That's my perspective. I'm sorry, LZ Skydog. I know it hurts. I wrestled with this to my detriment. I was not a great director for a long time. Still not a great one, but at least I understand it. And I was a terrible screenwriter in the sense that I was a brilliant writer of scripts, but I was a terrible collaborator. I was a pain in the ass. I didn't understand why people weren't doing it the way I told them to do it. And I fought with them, and eventually they stopped hiring me because I was not listening. So that is my experience of that, my opinion of that. There you go. Sorry, LZ Sayadog. I wish I could tell you that a screenwriter can control every detail and get the meaning through it. I don't believe that is true. I believe if you really want to do that, you probably need to do an art form where you have unlimited control over the medium itself. The problem is, unless you're shooting it yourself, unless you're doing the sound, and unless you're doing the acting, you can't control other people. That is my experience. Ghost Productions says, Hollywood seems like it's in flux, so literally anything could be on the table. Yes, the question of what's the zeitgeist, what's happening? The answer is it's in chaos. And so there is not currently, as far as I can tell, a zeitgeist, which also means anything is possible. You never know. Just don't count on it. Burgundy says, Next Institute, it depends on the genre. I find the industry loves tropes nowadays, adapting classics to appeal to modern audiences. Yes, that's another. The zeitgeist has got many threads, and one is adapting classics. Absolutely, that is a solid genre at the moment. Nishaj agrees with Skydog about wanting to control every aspect of a production. I'm so sorry, everyone. I am. Easier to market. Marketing is the problem of my century. Yes. Okay. Burgundy and Lake Filter are talking about how Lake Filter can work in publishing a story in different markets, in different nations. You market your book differently, but you'll still market it either way. Who will resonate with the topic the most? Who have you been writing to? Good questions. Good point. Michael says, Roger Ebert wrote that we rooted for Ben in The Graduate. Years later, as an older man, he related more to the antagonist, Mrs. Robinson. Yes, that's a. I don't know. It's weird to be switching from Ben to Mrs. Robinson, but I do understand in a way. But I think what Michael is talking and Mr. Ebert was talking about is the idea that we change. Our relationship to art changes. When there's something that we love at a certain age, we are going to see it differently later. Not better, not worse, but we all change. As Burgundy says, you may be a novelist, LZ Sidedog. Yes, that's sort of what I was saying. Okay. Burgundy and Lake Filter are going back and forth. I write mainly for the story, not to catch a certain demographic area, but I'm sure there's at least 10 people out there who love it. Just have to find a way to reach them. That's a good attitude. At least 10. And by the way that you reach them is different from the way that big companies market things. Big companies market things in a big, expensive push to try and get out there. Small folks tend to have to market in niches over time. Little bits here and there. The long tail, as they call it. And the long tail means, while there may be a spike of sales at the beginning for a big thing, over time it continues to find an audience. And if you are a small person, a person who is creating artwork in a small industry way, then the thing you need to do is say, I'm going to keep trying to sell this for 2 years. And I'm going to look for different ways to reach bits and pieces of the audience instead of saying, I want to get a lot of attention right now, because as we all know, it's an attention economy. And therefore the biggest players are fighting hard for the biggest hunk of attention. And the odds of you being able to knock them down, very, very small. So instead of trying to fight them in the big attention way, I would say, do the long, slow attention way. That's what I'm doing. We're talking about control over productions. When Indiana Jones, when he shoots the sword-wielding dude, it was totally improvised. It was improvised in the sense that they worked it out on the set. He didn't actually just the cameras were rolling and he did it. As far as I know, he and Spielberg worked that out because of various conditions that were happening at the time. But the main thing is, it was not preconceived in the script. Truth. Okay, Burgundy and Lake Filter. You have the internet. Yes, exactly. If you don't need the money, you may try sharing your story on writing platforms of social media like Substack or a blog. Put yourself out there. We believe in you. Burgundy's doing my job. I agree. What Burgundy is saying is true. I urge you guys to, especially in the conditions that we are in right now, and I mean we, try not to say, this work has to pay my rent. Say, I need to pay my rent and I need to do this work, but don't try and tie those two things together. It's it's making both harder. Whereas if you separate them and you say, I got to do the work, and on the internet, I can continue to put my work out there. Damn, that's a great plan as far as I can tell. It's the plan I'm doing. Okay. Lake Filter says, may happiness and good health be with you all at every word you write. Yes, absolutely. Okay, Tomorrow Kiddo says, Thank you. Grateful to catch you live after months of missing you due to time zones. I assume you were changing time zones because I'm staying still. Sadly, I have a very routine and small life. Good to see you tomorrow, kiddo. Glad you are here. LZ Skydog. Oh, I'm glad that did not just frustrate and annoy you. Thanks from Burgundy to Filter. I love when you guys talk to each other. Okay. Well, not control to where I don't accept other suggestions, but I would like to work with them. I could be wrong. I guess I mean a writer-director way, of course, to be open to a team. Yes, hopefully that is part of learning. That is part of being a writer-director. So hopefully learning how to be both controlled and open, that's the job of a good director. Ghost Production says, the reason I want to write in prose fiction more is I am a control freak when it comes to prose and action lines. Then you're there. Keep writing fiction. I agree. Balance, try, explore. This is excellent. You are welcome. Yes, you are all welcome. Happy holidays. I'm glad that my advice is helpful. It has been a joy. I am grateful. I am thankful that you guys are all here. This has been fun. Let's do it again next week. All right. So I think you know where this is going. I hope that you will all... Burgundy says, the other thing is you can try playwriting. It's still collaborative, but it's true. Playwrights have more control than screenwriters. That is a fact. All of you have yourselves a safe and happy week. I wish you all well, whether or not you are in America and Thanksgiving it up, or just in the world and living your lives. Go write something.